met her in the fall. He took her to a movie, and when they done it all, he took.
Hello and welcome to the Fabulous Picture Show. I'm Amanda Palmer. This week at the Everyman Cinema Club we're showing the wartime thriller The Counterfeiters. Directed by Stefan Rusovitsky and starring Karl Markovich, it's about how the Nazis ran the largest counterfeiting operation in history. Also coming up, director David Cronenberg has a history of violence. We look at his most emotionally brutal barrage yet, Eastern Promises.
Forget any of this ever happened.
We also meet composer Howard Shore, who takes us through 30 years of movie music, and it's not always pretty. And we go on location to Africa's largest slum to meet the star of the Kibera Kid.
Mob justice.
But first, the London Film Festival began this week and we've been bathing our eyeballs in the soothing salve of cinema.
Can't drive around talking on my mobile.
Right, well, off to battle.
Eating yourself inside of me, you're taking over my life.
Next. Noddy Holder.
Bob Geldof.
Showcasing more than 300 films, the 51st London Film Festival opened with David Cronenberg's gripping saga of Russian gangsters in London.
Now I'm going to do his teeth and cut off his fingers.
In Eastern Promises, Viggo Mortensen plays a bodyguard for a Russian mafia boss. When he meets midwife Naomi Watts, he draws her into a world of violence that her family had left Russia to escape.
Unidentified woman died December the 20th, 2313. Baby girl born 20th of December, 2314.
For the Aussie actress, it's not her first walk on the cinematic wild side. You're a bit partial to the odd thriller, aren't you?
Yes.
You're not scared even slightly. I mean, Cronenberg would scare a lot of actresses off.
Really? Yeah, he draws me right in.
Where did you get this?
I found it in the handbag of a girl who died in my ward.
You should bury her secrets with her body.
I loved the juxtaposition of her relationships with her family, and then also with Viggo's character.
Read the diary. She was 14 when he raped her. You bastards murdered her.
Uspokoi se. Anger is very dangerous.
All this Russian intrigue eerily echoes the real-life poisoning of Alexander Litvinenko, a former KGB spy. The amazing story unfolded in London during the production of the film last year. It was incredibly prescient to do a film that dealt with Russian gangsters because you were shooting the film when Litvinenko was going on, didn't you?
That's right.
Which is a bit scary in some ways.
About half a block from where we were living, which was an apartment, was a building owned by Berezovsky, and they did find traces of polonium poisoning there, we assumed that Litvinenko was there at some point after he'd been poisoned. What it made us feel was that we had accidentally put our finger on the pulse of something that was quite current and quite potent, the sort of the emergence of Russia as a force after the fall of the Soviet Union. So it was more exciting than scary.
Screenwriter Stephen Knight's previous film, Dirty Pretty Things, preceded the widespread coverage of immigrants being abused by gangsters. So he seems to have a touch of the Nostradamus about him. Obviously, Litvinenko, you obviously had no idea that was going to happen in London. It was almost, you know... I mean,
well, I think sometimes stories, you know, they have their time. And I don't know, these unhappy coincidences happen.
They are. You don't have a crystal ball then, that's what you're telling me.
I do, actually, yeah.
You do have a crystal ball. So what are you writing about next, Stephen?
I can't tell you, because otherwise everyone would do.
Well, our crystal ball says you won't soon forget Eastern Promises. Eastern Promises is David Cronenberg's 12th collaboration with his old friend Howard Shore, a composer who's been setting the mood for some of the best films in the last 30 years.
When you start to add up just how many great films this 61-year-old has enriched, it can blow your mind. Big films with big stars.
She begged for her life. Shut up. And for the life of the baby inside of her.
But it wasn't until his contribution to a certain multi-billion-dollar grossing trilogy,
9 companions,
that Shaw's brilliance was officially certified.
You shall be the Fellowship of the Ring.
Right. Where are we going?
Middle Earth.
Yeah.
Do you consider that your greatest work?
I think in film it probably is.
It was a big chunk of your life as well.
It was close to 4 years. It's close to 11 hours of music that's cohesive and tells this story, which is considered one of the most complex fantasy worlds ever created.
Scoring Peter Jackson's epic trilogy got Shaw his first Oscar, his first 3 Oscars in fact.
Certainly, what always it struck me, which is what Ennio Morricone used, was the choral voices that you brought in.
Well, I think Lord of the Rings is in the music, a choral piece. But when I started rereading it, I realized there's so many poems and beautiful lyrics in the book, and I thought, this should be in the film. How can we express these ideas in the film?
The Lord of the Rings brought him the shiny statues, but it was his panoply of experimental scores for David Cronenberg that first established Shaw's reputation.
Hey, where you going? Don't do it, there'll be hell to pay.
They grew up in the same Toronto neighbourhood and have worked together from the late 70s right up to the present.
Sometimes I think this is all a hallucination.
But initially, the teenage Shaw was too intimidated to approach the local filmmaker he'd long admired.
It took about 14 years, really, from 14 to about 28 to get up the nerve to say to David, you know, can I work on one of your films? You had beautiful leathers and hair. It was great. You would see this person driving around the neighborhood. He was the coolest
Believe it
guy.
or not, I was cool then.
He was the coolest guy.
They both reached the mainstream in 1986 with The Fly. Shaw's score for The Fly was a tour de force of fevered melodrama.
We shot a scene and he's just walking down the street. And the music is, you know, big. Which is not our style generally, to be bigger than what you're seeing on the screen. But it is a man about to meet his destiny.
Shaw's also managed to squeeze in some other collaborations during his 30 years in Hollywood.
We are going to have the most terrifying monster ever seen on film. A ghastly creature, created from an atomic mutation.
Tim Burton's movie about the so-bad-he's good director Ed Wood inspired Shaw to evoke the Latin rhythms of 50s B-movies. Just before he worked on Martin Scorsese's Oscar-winning The Departed, Shaw scored his Howard Hughes biopic The Aviator.
It was actually a piece written to describe the joy of flight. Howard Hughes was so fascinated with speed and with airplanes, so in a way the music describes him as well. It's the, you know, really the feeling of this incredible power in a new airplane.
347.
Shaw is already at work on Martin Scorsese's next 2 films. Like Howard the Billionaire, Howard the Composer never stops pushing it to the limit.
In part 2, we're screening The Counterfeiters, followed by Q&A with these two. This is the director and the actor. I'm going to start with you, Stefan. This story came from a true story.
It is a true story. It was written down by Adolf Burger, who's still alive, and he's been helping us work on the script. I was fascinated by this idea of having a counterfeit in a concentration camp, a crook in the concentration camp.
And Carl was the crook. But you didn't play Burger, Carl.
No. I play a professional counterfeiter called Solomon Sorovich. His real name was Solomon Smolyanov.
It's a great role, and he does it brilliantly, but you'll get to see that in part 2.
He met her in